How many times have you heard the cliche, winning the Daytona 500 changes your entire life? Well, no duh, of course it does. You get a fancy ring, you put your hands and feet in cement for the Daytona 500 Walk of Fame, and of course you embark on a cross-country media tour. But what about the impact? If you're a driver who's gotten the short end of the stick in Cup and has earned his nickname because he's crashed so many times, or if you're a race team that knows how to market itself well to sponsors but has just failed to get those sponsors in victory lane. NRF Productions proudly presents winning the Daytona 500 changes everything for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JTG. When you think of the name Ricky Stenhouse Jr., what comes to your mind? His 2 Xfinity Series championships? Probably not. That he was the boyfriend of Danica Patrick? No, unless you engaged physically and intimately with her section in the SI swimsuit issue 15 years ago. Okay, I get it. That is not why you remember the name Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Because of course, this is the driver named Ricky Stenhouse Jr. because he just wrecks so much. Ricky really got this nickname because of his tendencies to overdrive the car. After all, this is what happens when you hang around Kyle Larson quite a bit as a dirt racer, and you can tell that some of Larson's tendencies to make dumb mistakes and race his competitors rather dirty on some occasions has rubbed a bit onto Ricky Stenhouse, and has rubbed his competitors and NASCAR's faithful in the wrong way. Even with that, Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s reputation is largely not his fault. And I get it. The reaction is going to be sour. Do you even watch the races, NRF? You're brand new to NASCAR, but that's okay. We all started at some point. Okay, yes, I wasn't alive for the first 2/3 of NASCAR's history, but I think I'm old enough to understand NASCAR's Roman Empire known as Roush Fenway Racing. Jack Roush is a man that prided himself in doing more with less, like Thom Brennaman prided himself as a man of faith. And there's a drive to deep left field, and that'll be a home run. This would lead Roush Fenway Racing down the path of the retail store counterpart, Kmart. This was an organization that let technology pass them by. Heck, they didn't even have a competition director until Robbie Reiser took over in 2007. He stayed in that position for 10 years, far too long, as many thought that he should have focused on a certain area that he was good at, like the shock department. That was the Achilles heel with Roush Fenway Racing. They stuck with the same people and tried to do the same things until they got to a point where those same people left, and those people were mainly the drivers. Matt Kenseth left the organization after winning a Daytona 500, and instantly he had a career resurgence. Carl Edwards won 2 crown jewels and made a championship appearance in his brief Joe Gibbs Racing career. Greg Biffle flirted with leaving Roush various times, but they call him Stick with the Biff for a reason. Despite receiving some lucrative offers like succeeding Tony Stewart in the JGR number 20, yes, that was an offer that made it to Greg Biffle's desk. Greg Biffle was just too afraid to make that change, as he developed some great relationships with the people at 3M who stuck to him like glue until the performance at Roush led them to jump ship to sponsor 11 races in Jeff Gordon's final season. Most Monday mornings in the Roush shop, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was greeted to Nextel Cups and Harley J. Earl trophies that were collecting dust. In his 7 seasons with the team, his best was 2017 when he won 2 races and made it to the round of 12. And definitely the hardest part of winning those races was having to give Danica Patrick directions on how to get to victory lane. Those would be his only victories at Roush. That means, mathematically, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. won 1 race for every 2 crew chiefs he had at Roush Fenway Racing. After the end of a humiliating 2019 season that included him spinning out the leader, Roush exercised an option he had with another driver on another team. NASCAR's Mendoza line Chris Buescher was in. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., as he was nicknamed, was out of the 17 and out of a ride. Back in 2019, understandable, but in 2020 vision, in hindsight, Roush Fenway Racing did not have the proper system, the proper structure in place for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. to thrive. If you don't believe me, I want you to pause this video and read this quote from Roush's president, Steve Newmark. Okay, I get it. You like to avoid reading like the plague, so I'll too long didn't read it. Basically, Steve Newmark admitted that they didn't fulfill their potential with the 17 program. So in response to losing his job, Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s management team at KHI started making phone calls to find him employment for the 2020 season. One phone call with Tad and Ernie later, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had himself a brand new ride, a brand new home. But like Roush, his brand new team was also in a bit of a decline. The grinders and great people at JTG Doherty Racing were finally seeing their NASCAR dream take off in the mid-2010s. AJ Allmendinger won the organization their first cup race in 2014 that put them in the postseason, a major payday for that organization. 2 years later, with Randall Burnett, yes, that same two-time Xfinity Series winning crew chief Randall Burnett, JTG ended the season with 4 top 10s in the final 6 races to propel AJ Allmendinger to a 19th place points finish. This is where the decline starts to begin. Each organization has their own unique story. For Roush, it was failing to evolve technologically. DEI, it was mostly this toxic woman, plus swapping the 8 and 15 teams in 2005, or the most likely case, losing sponsorship like Furniture Row, Levine, and Germain. Your mind is going to explode when I tell you this, but the reason that JTG had a mini decline was because they had an abundance of sponsors. Ted Geschichter started out selling soaps for Procter & Gamble. Because of that, the company eventually bridged out to NASCAR sponsorships, and the rest is history. JTG Doherty Racing perfected the craft of keeping sponsors happy to the point where AJ Allmendinger said it bluntly. A brand new 37 team was assembled for Chris Buescher in 2017, where it was a variety of Roush refugees and new people from different organizations. Okay, I get what question's coming next. So Nathan, how on earth does having an abundance of sponsors hurt a race team? The more the merrier, right? It's not necessarily that they had a lack of funding, but rather the fact that the team was assembled rather late in the offseason, and you could tell by their performance the entire organization disappointed in the 2017 season. The next season, Chevrolet introduced the abysmal performing Camaro with the pointed nose, which hurt them even more for another 2 seasons. When Ricky Stenhouse Jr. swapped seats with Chris Buescher, JTG finished top 20 in the owner's points the previous season, but still, it had been 5 years since the last time they had won a Cup Series race. The 2020 Daytona 500 looked to usher in that new era. As JTG Doherty Racing, they made a statement right off the bat. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JTG would make a statement by winning the Hendrick Motorsports Pole Qualifying Invitational, which may or may not have been scripted. But as for the race itself, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., the memes of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. would be reinforced.
One driver in particular that's going to rumble out of the pocket. Oh, William Byron gets third. He'll slide down to the inside of the racetrack. Matter of fact, he'll slam hard into the wall, right at our feet, right over here on the back straightaway.
That meme, continuously underwhelming results, and the worst throwback livery in NASCAR history that also became a meme. JTG Doherty Racing had 2 subpar seasons, which led Brad Doherty and Tad Geschichter to really step back and take a look at the state of the organization. Going back to one conversation Doherty had with one of his close friends when he was starting this entire endeavor. If you have one bad race team, why have 2? After running the 37 for an entire season as an open car, JTG Doherty Racing was back to a one-car organization, back to being hopefully a strong one-car team. 2022 was the great reset they needed, not just because the new number placement was the perfect fit for JTG and their sponsorship model. Every organization was now on ground level, whether you were the defending champs in Hendrick, you were a brand new full-time organization in Colleague, or if you were JTG. The next generation car busted wide open a brand new era for the NASCAR garage, and the 2022 Daytona 500 almost did that for JTG. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had the Daytona 500 by the reins, able to dictate which direction the race was going. Too bad the horse bucked him off. That heartbreak was the start of an atrocious first few months. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was 31st in the driver's standings before a Brian Patty strategy call injected the team with some much needed momentum. Second place at Dover to Chase Elliott kicked off a hot streak of 4 straight top 10 finishes and a transfer into the All-Star race by dominating the first segment. From there, the only other highlight on the year was when he led 23 laps, was door-to-door with the 2-time Kansas winner Martin Truex Jr. before, in quintessential Ricky Stenhouse Jr. fashion, he overdrove the car, ending his chances at winning the Hollywood Casino 400. This third straight subpar season from JTG Doherty Racing really left them with some more soul searching to do after a 28th place finish in the owner's standings. Then you also had the fabrics of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Brian Patty's relationship. They were really starting to be torn apart. You could see it with their spicy radio communications at Phoenix. Tensions were rising, and because of that, Brian Patty was given his pink slip within the first few days of the offseason. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for 2023 would be reunited with the guy that made him forever a NASCAR champion. Mike Kelly didn't just bring about change within the team's approach, but he also changed the tide of the team's culture. Like many crew chiefs, Kelly just could not sleep the night before the 500. At 3:30 in the morning, he did something he did various times with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. when they were in the Xfinity Series together. He wrote his driver a note and stuck it inside the car where he could read. Much like his days in Xfinity, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had no idea that his crew chief had written him a note until he climbed into his car for the 65th running of the Great American Race, looked above his head and at the bright neon piece of duct tape that simply read, "We believe." Even as Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got a speeding ticket from NASCAR late in the race, they believed. Even when the 47 shake and baked with the 5 to get back into the same heartbreaking position he was in 1 year ago. Like all offseason, the JTG team believed that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. would put himself in the best position possible to maximize his potential of winning the Great American Race. Finally, by crushing the final restart with a last lap crash that slowed down the outside lane, on the inside, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. used that motivational note to add to his resume of 2 Cup Series wins, 2 Xfinity championships, and of course his 3 championships in Denny Hamlin's Golf Guys Tour.
And Ricky Stenhouse has won the Daytona 500.
Winning the Daytona 500 changed Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Tad Geschickter, and Brad Doherty's lives forever. And so you guys are probably shaking your head at this point. Come on, Nathan, we all know that. NASCAR YouTubers at it again with their regurgitated opinions. All right. Let me loop this back around and restart my talking point. When I say this changes everything for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JTG, I mean this changes everything. And I think we all know at this point, money can't buy you happiness, but I mean, you can do a lot with money that can make you awfully happy, just saying. Now, the money you get for winning the Daytona 500, those figures haven't been released publicly since Joey Logano in 2015 when he won a $1.5 million payout. However, when you adjust the purse in 2015 to 2023, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JTG, they just won themselves an estimated $2.3 million. Okay, that's something everyone knows. The Daytona 500 has all the money from the overpriced tickets and the 10 plus full screen commercial breaks.
Straight right from the makers, I'm shopping like a billionaire.
I need to try it first.
Yeah.
Customize and save.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty.
Let's focus on the less obvious financial impact of winning this race. As alluded to by Denny Hamlin on the Actions Detrimental podcast, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is basically in the playoffs. Let's not lie to ourselves. There has never been a regular season in the Cup Series where there were more than 16 winners. Because of that, the JTG 47 team is set to jump up at least 12 positions in the final owners' points. Just by making that top 16 in points alone, That swings the end of the season payout for the JTG team by $600,000 to $700,000, even if Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is an uncompetitive round of 16 exit. Just by winning the Daytona 500, JTG Daugherty Racing's Daytona 500 victory just guaranteed the team $3 million no matter how the rest of the season plays out, as long as they don't say screw it, miss a couple races, and become ineligible to make the postseason. With a competitive, expensive sport like NASCAR, where teams like Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, Stuart Haas, they really try to spend as much money as they can to make their cars as competitive as possible, there's a crap ton that JTG Daugherty Racing can do with $3 million that can make their cars a lot more competitive. And if you want the prime example of how winning the Daytona 500 can really bolster the performance of a smaller team, look no further than 2 years ago. Front Row Motorsports, they came to Daytona amidst a small team plague. There was maybe a bit of a worry that might happen to Front Row Motorsports, but lo and behold, Michael McDowell goes out and wins the Daytona 500, which changed everything for that organization. Okay, so I don't have the spreadsheets. I don't know what exactly Front Row Motorsports spent to make their cars and trucks more competitive, so there you go, more reason to say that NASCAR YouTubers aren't credible, yada yada yada. What I can say is that Front Row Motorsports has taken a considerable step forward competitively after winning the 2021 Daytona 500. A few months after their big win, their truck team goes out and wins its first race, then later makes it to the Truck Series Owners Championship. The next season, they hire a Zane Smith willing to do whatever it takes to win the damn thing after coming up short in 2020 and 2021. This was their driver that would lead the Front Row Motorsports team to 4 victories and the 2022 Series Championship. Now you just step back and look at the brand new Craftsman Truck Series and see that Front Row Motorsports is now the organization to beat. But I want to emphasize the most what happened with Michael McDowell. 2021 was statistically his best season in the NASCAR Cup Series. 5 top 10s, including 3 straight to start the season, and ultimately, because he made the playoffs with his 500 victory, he got himself a 16th place points finish. Drew Blickensderfer leaves to try to make Eric Almirola less mid, no problem. With Blake Harris, Michael McDowell put up an even better season with 12 top 10 finishes. That was more than William Byron at Hendrick Motorsports last season. And without a 100-point penalty, the 34 car would have finished inside the top 20 in points for the second straight season. If you're a NASCAR fan that's been following the last couple years, it is illogical to disagree with this. Michael McDowell winning the Daytona 500 at age 36 changed everything for he and Front Row Motorsports. So continuing with that trend, what's stopping Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JTG Daugherty Racing from doing the same? The $3 million in winnings can be invested into giving Ricky Stenhouse Jr. the best handling cup cars he's ever driven, which can in return lead to less instances where he has to overdrive the car to keep up. Okay, yes, maybe the JTG Daugherty Racing team, their program isn't the strongest, but it's idiotic to pen in Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at this point in the season as a for sure first round exit. Let's look no further than last year. Darlington and Kansas, they were both a part of their top 10 run last year. If they can really work on their short track program, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he is really good at Bristol. Heck, he almost got his first career win there in 2014 with Mike Kelly. From what I've been able to gather from watching the playoffs, the round of 16, it's all about not making mistakes. That's it. Honestly, all it'll take for JTG Daugherty Racing is 3 top 15 finishes and maybe a top 10. So if we get to a reality where Ricky Stenhouse Jr. makes it back to the round of 12 for the first time since 2017, he has some good odds in that round too. Why do I say this? Look no further than the race that is sandwiched in between races 1 and 3 in this second round. Suddenly, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. making the round of 8 doesn't sound all that insane, now does it? But even if it is a round of 16 exit, there are a lot of competitive teams this season. JTG Daugherty Racing's future is bright in more ways than when Ricky Stenhouse Jr. runs that bright, can't-miss-it Sunny D livery. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. isn't going anywhere, at least for the next 2 seasons, after he signed a multi-year deal to return to JTG. The sponsorship isn't going anywhere. Tad Geschichter is an expert at marketing, and anchor sponsor Kroger is more than satisfied with the exposure they got from winning the 500. If anything, now JTG can market itself as a Daytona 500 winning team. That's important if they want to build a sponsorship roster to eventually return to a 2-car team, assuming that they get their 47 car running at an optimal level. The new crew chief, Mike Kelly, who believes in Ricky Stenhouse Jr. more than Ricky Stenhouse Jr. believes in Ricky Stenhouse Jr., unless JGR or RFK throws him a boatload of money out of desperation to get Martin Truex Jr. or Brad Keselowski the Daytona 500 win that eludes their NASCAR resumes. This JTG team is motivated, and now they have even more reason to believe in Daytona 500 champion Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who, by the way, just won his first Daytona 500 at age 35. He's got a year up on Michael McDowell in his quest to age 38, statistically the age when a NASCAR driver performs at his peak. It is cliche to say that the Daytona 500 changes one's life, but for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and single car JTG Doherty Racing, winning the Great American Race opens up a Pandora's box of potential in NASCAR that is just within reach of reality. I sincerely hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, I encourage you to check out some of the other great full tank NASCAR content this channel has to offer. The 100-day grind to Gateway is on, and you guys won't want to miss a single second of content. Other than that, this is Nathan for NRF Productions. Life's a beach, and then you drive.